Deltarune comes out in just a few days, and to prepare for it, I've been watching YouTubers once again play through the amazing 2-chaptered story. But because I'm curious, I want to make this video on my takes of Deltarune, theories I currently have, and where we will go next on this journey, just to relate to in the future and see how wrong or right I am. Because I will forever be salty that I had been saying since the start of Undertale that we, the soul, are the villain, but everyone thought I was just being dramatic until Deltarune came out, so buckle up and let's begin this journey. Firstly, my usual disclaimer. I am in no way saying what I think is true or that I'm a professional theorist. Would that be considered a conspiracist? Either way, this video is made for fun and for myself mainly, so if you disagree, you can give your points politely or just leave, because I am one of those awful YouTubers who deletes mean comments no matter how right they are. Speak politely if you disagree, or even if you do agree, and we'll do fine. Respect here is mandatory. Also, I haven't really watched any theory videos, minus the one made by MatPat a while back ago, which I don't agree with at all. No hate to them, but it's all in your head, it gives me the ick. Especially since Chapter 2 came out, I guess that just dates how long since it's been I saw that video, and I have no idea if another one has been popped up since. So, please, just know, OMG, this has already been confirmed, idiot, because that's just plain rude. Also, it's been a long time since I played the games. This is all just kind of bubbling around. Oh, and, Deltarune spoilers ahead. Obviously. Idiot! Because this is an amalgamation of thoughts, it'll be a bit messier than other videos, so forgive me, but I guess I'll start with my general view of the game. Unlike it's just D&D therapy, I think the events that are happening in Deltarune are somewhat real, at least to those living in it. Birdley low-key dying in Snowgrave confirmed that for me. It may not be their physical bodies, but it is them. The thing I can't really connect is why there are items in the physical world that change into subjects of the dark world. I really don't like the theory that it is just in your head, but perhaps our soul being there somehow gives them the power to handle a physical form? But if that's the case, why can only certain ones survive in certain parts of the dark world and turn to stone when moved to another one? The rooms that you wake up seem to fit the theme of the dark world that you're in, so some sort of outside influence could be happening there. Instead, I think Deltarune, just like its name, is the mismatch recycle remnants of Undertale, which is horrifying because if that's true, Toby just confirmed all those AUs can technically be canon. Yes, even that one. Speaking of AUs, this one in particular I find very interesting, only because there are notes in the game that connect to Undertale, but also disconnect it, perhaps on purpose. Firstly, the Darkners versus the Lightners. The history of these two groups that one day the Lightners decided to push the Darkners back, seal them away, and over time they became nothing but a myth, a legend. The Darkners, however, never forgot, and know that if they do not find ways to entertain themselves, give themselves hope, they'll eventually go mad. At one point, the king of the first area ends up wanting to declare war on the Lightners, opening another dark fountain to teeter the balance and reclaim what was rightfully theirs. That sounds eerily familiar, right? Undertale is the story about the exact same thing, except with humans and monsters. In Deltarune, humans and monsters are considered one unit, with the Darkners being something else. And speaking about the reverse story, I wonder if there's any merit to thinking that in this reversed world, humans are the ones that were banished. The issue there is it's the double theming with both Darkners and humans being trapped. However, it would give motive for Chris to want to open these dark fountains, perhaps in a way saving humanity. But that just jumps us into another issue. Who is Chris? General public connects Chris and Frisk, which is fair, but I think it's more complex than that. I wonder if we're still seeing the double trouble with Kara and Frisk together in one body. But Kara is getting stronger. Kara has the ability to work outside the game's parameters, doing things we cannot counter or control. So it makes sense if they had the skill to tear us out of control if they've gotten more active in this world. Frisk may just be along for the ride. If that's the case though, why bother going to all that trouble making dark fountains? Why become a bully to monsters and a shut-in? Kara was always dark-tempered, but they were not, in my opinion, a bad person. I headcanon that if you actually do the genocide route and then true pacifist after, Kara purposely shows you an X'd out photo because they know that's all you can see, and in reality the other characters are happily living their lives unaware of our fear for their safety. Kara was willing to risk it all for the monsters that they loved, so I strongly believe at the end of the day, they have the interests of the monsters at heart. Using that perspective, it helps us break down the Dark Fountain stuff, changing the perspective. It isn't us with Chris and Ralsei and Susie versus this weird entity. It is the entire game against us. Chris could very well be working for them, purposely or by accident, to meet their goals. They are one of the few who are aware of the real limitations Deltarune has, and thus act accordingly to make sure everything works as planned. Remember, we are the enemy. We break Noelle. We can cause chaos or choose mercy. Chris reacts with their expressions, not their words. Time and time again, we can do things that Chris themselves are against, and actively hurt them in the process just to satiate our own hunger. They are not a character that wants to work with us. I think while Ralsei and some other characters are working together to get something from us, thus brings the night. Let's get over the big hurdle. I could go either way for the night debacle. They could be Gaster, they could be Chris, they could even be Ralsei. I lean more towards Gaster, and Chris opening a Dark Fountain at the end of Chapter 2 is a misdirection and desperate attempt to recontrol their own fate. My second theory is the Knight is just straight up Ralsei, working under the rule of Gaster since he may not be able to be in the physical world. But if you think about it, the Darkners are meant to be seen as a different world, so there may be different rules. And while this is just a loose backup idea, I do think Ralsei has a much larger role than that. It's become pretty common knowledge that Ralsei is just Asriel mixed up, but what if it wasn't just Asriel, but post-Flowey Asriel? Flowey was just as resistant to determination resets as Sans, and it's been loosely hinted he knows what's going on with some of his dialogue options. It wouldn't make sense that Asriel got his reset, but Sans didn't. And we know if you've done the true passive ascending that he does feel immense guilt for what he did and knows he should atone for his sins. If Sans and Gaster have the ability to reset and remember, then it makes sense to capitalize on Asriel's guilt and con him into being someone they needed to support the player directly. The sense of familiarity followed by unbiased support and purposeful redirection makes me positive Ralsei is aware of the time outside the game. The easiest example will be the start of Chapter 2 when he mentions how he's missed us and how long it's been, even though the game time it's only been a day. To push more on the connection of post-Flowey Asriel, we have the official art of Ralsei covered in flowers, albeit not the same bright yellow we're aware of, and of course the black heart on his robes, which matches the heart on his final form in Undertale. And this one's a bit of a stretch, but the dummy at the start of Chapter 1 looks like Ralsei. If you remember the dummy in Undertale, they were possessed by ghosts. Could be unrelated, but I personally think the details are in the devil. The devil's in the details. Damn it. And finally, the pink details. None of the other characters have that bright pink besides Ralsei and Chris, both around their necks. I think this is meant to represent something, but I don't really know at this present moment. Perhaps it's connected to Ralsei's job in the world. Perhaps it's symbolic. The odd thing is that when he first joins the party, they call it the red scarf, which there's only one character that I know that has one of those. Ralsei's job is simple. Keep the player playing, keep them focused, entertained, staying on track. Anything that is questioned is brushed over. Their opening act, a simple story of needing heroes to tantalize the player. The redirection of focus to Susie when needed, both in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. And the loose frustration when you're in the Snowgrave route and you ignore him. The one thing I can't put my finger on is this. If Ralsei knows about the player, which he clearly does, why is he cool with it possessing either his sibling, his savior, or both? If they wanted to capitalize on his guilt, he remembers, but if he doesn't remember, do they manipulate him into thinking it's for the greater good? Also, just a side note, at the end of Chapter 1, Ralsei does have a learning moment where he mentions that we live in a world where kindness isn't always the answer, alluding to the killer be killed mindset that was prevalent in Undertale. Just thought it was kind of interesting. When I think about the Ralsei situation, I think about Noelle and find an uncomfortable similarity in that mindset. No matter Snowgrave or not, you get the same ending, and the constant theme of your choices don't matter is prevalent. Snowgrave was meant to be a very disturbing series of events, one that you know fully well what you're doing is wrong, manipulating your kind-hearted neighbor. That isn't Chris's doing, that is your doing. Could Ralsei be in a similar situation, being led to blindly trust someone only because they haven't done him wrong yet? And it's interesting how if you defeat Spamton Neo through violence, you get a puppet scarf for Ralsei for those who abandon healing. But if you go pacifist, you gain a deal maker, a piece of armor for anyone, just something to chew on. Speaking of harder routes, I also want to talk about the optional bosses, currently only Jevil and Spamton. Originally, I thought they could perhaps be remnants of the Gaster followers, which is why they were able to be reached out to. The issue with that is this. There's only like 4, 5, but 7 chapters are planned for Deltarune. My logic was that because they knew Gaster before, they can hear him reach out and thus are easier to manipulate. Jevil was told the truth of their lives. They're trapped in the game, a universe that starts and restarts and restarts however often the player wants. Spamton was taught how to sell so well he made great money, rising up the ranks quickly and arrogantly, yet couldn't achieve anything on his own. His end goal was to be free from the binds that chain him. Both run the same, wanting something that was given to them by a stranger and going mad because of it. And both are very difficult boss battles. But hey, it's a challenge that will be worth it in the end, right? Right? I think the optional bosses are the key to the worst that can happen. Each time you defeat one, you gain an item as well as a shadow crystal, an item that you cannot see yet still somehow casts a shadow. In normal RPGs, playing all the optional fights can end up leading to a different, usually much better ending. But this isn't a regular RPG, this is a Toby Fox game. The hardest outcomes are always the ones that have the worst endings, the genocides. So why would this game be any different? Consistently, you, the player, choose to do more challenging fights with zero reward, minus the joy of conquest or curiosity. Gaster most likely knows this, and by doing the optionals, we could be playing right into his hands. Or, well, maybe not hands, he's got holes in them. Either way, he knew how to summon our attention, and he knows who we are and what we can do. I know personally, I plan on playing the game without the optional bosses in hopes to avoid any kind of unflavorable outcomes, even if it isn't the one that gives the most answers. Because if the end goal is our worst outcome, then I wouldn't be surprised if our final boss is ourselves, or, well, Chris, Kara, Frisk, whatever. Powering up our own bodies that we possess, being able to handle against us. We know that there's a plan for only one ending, but extra fights are in full season. And even then, this isn't the scariest of what could happen. There are many paths Deltarune could take, and no one answer has everything lined up perfectly. Everyone experiences their game differently, but something happened to me long before Deltarune was even public yet. Almost a decade ago, I made a theory video about Sans being from the past and was thrown into the future. Now, besides the massive amount of cringe I got from rewatching the first 20 seconds of that video, I privated a few months later due to some not so nice comments about being the worst theorist on the planet. It was back when I was much more sensitive, and even though I got a lot of support and great feedback and comments, it only took like 3 mean ones to make me quit. So remember that your words have power, I guess. One of the comments that was not like that was an unmarked account, made the very same month as my video. All it said was, in 4 words, Susie is the key. Do not forget my words, you might understand later. Nothing else. No elaboration. I didn't understand why they made that comment. I didn't know who she was, and Googling it showed me a single bit of dialogue about her. But after that comment, I couldn't get it out of my head. It gave me such a chill I couldn't shake. When Deltarune first released, I played it the night of. I remember that night so clearly, running home from work, looking forward to seeing something new and experiencing a Toby Fox game firsthand. And when Susie showed up, it was like an ice bath. This was the girl I got in the comments about. She was in the game, active, talking, threatening me. If you haven't seen it yet, I made a video breaking down Susie as a character because she was the one I was biased against. Chapter 1, I didn't like her at all, I'll be honest. Chapter 2, I'd literally commit crimes to keep her safe. Toby has a way of doing that. But what I don't mention about her in that video is that it's clear she's all about breaking the path that you're meant to follow. If you need to solve a puzzle, she'll suggest going over it. If you're a hero, she wants to be a villain. She is against the narrative at every turn, unwilling to play the part she was given until you arrive. You gave Susie something she's always dreamed of, companionship. As the story continues, she allows herself to be told what to do. This is huge, all things considered, because we started with her being a very first person who tells us our choices don't matter, yet in the end, it's our choices that will move us along. I worry about the future of Susie, but I think her origins are much more interesting. I believe Susie, for some unknown reason, was a struggle to control and contain. I don't know if the answer lays with an Undertale Deltarune or isn't available to us yet, but here's what I think. Susie is broken. Firstly, let's talk about her in Undertale. A clam comes forward mentioning they have a neighbor who has a kid around our age and that we should be friends. They claim it in the name of synchronicity. They couldn't have used an easier word. It means the simultaneous occurrence of events that appear significantly related but have no discernible connection. A common example is you think of your friend and then you get that text message from them, similar to the morphogenic field, another personal favorite study of mine. How can I say morphogenic but not synchronicity? To me, this just screams that someone is trying to get our attention and only half faking the random chance. And if you meet Clam Goner, they'll say your meeting will happen very soon, alluding Susie. Here's a key issue. Susie and Susie are two different names. With so many other things twisted around to fit in place, why is it different? A retcon? Highly improbable, as Susie was added later and probably meant to allude towards Susie. Well, what if Susie was meant to be an outlier? She isn't a variable like everyone else. She's different. I think they wanted to mold the perfect companion, someone who would be your sidekick, your yes man, but somehow completely missed the ball altogether. I read a comment on an animation video that blew my mind. Deltarune is filled with words and names being mixed up to create something anew. Ralsei and Asriel, Deltarune and Undertale. But Susie also has one. Susie is an issue. A problem child that isn't acting the way she was meant to act with the player. Even her name was changed, not as a retcon, but on purpose to symbolize her strength to break the mold. Susie isn't afraid to point out weird interactions or contradictions and genuinely cares for Chris. She doesn't let odd situations go as easily as Ralsei would like and has a thirst to learn outside her class and expectations, like to heal. She goes from zero empathy to being the first one offering to check on someone who may need support, and comes across as overly polite but an awkward oaf towards Toriel specifically. Who knows if it's her natural motherly charm, hope to make a good impression on her best friend's mom, or something else. After all, this is a woman who has been known to be kind and loving to all children, and gives them a place to feel safe, even when they think they've got a dangerous history like Susie does. And that brings me to the comparison of abuse in Deltarune vs. Undertale, as it's an interesting one to look at. Both games have two characters loosely implied to be abused, that being Frisk and Kara and Noelle and Susie respectively. In case you aren't aware, Noelle is implied to be abused by her mother because she has very high standards. Just because a child is fed and well taken care of does not mean that they aren't being abused. There is such thing as educational abuse or high pressure abuse. This is just spitballing notes at some point, but I wonder if there's supposed to be a connection there with Susie mirroring Kara and Noelle to Frisk. Kara was known to be scary but loved by those who let them in, even though they had a mean streak and didn't know when to stop, and could also be a bit extreme with their loyalty ending up hurting themselves. Almost untouchable. And also had a weird history with eating stuff that wasn't food. Noelle, on the other hand, is passive, kind, and bubbling with potential, as long as you're willing to push her for it. She has that water off a duck's back personality, being able to get along with anyone and see the good in them with their gentle nature. I don't think the spirits of Frisk and Kara are in these characters, but I feel like their personalities may have had a note in influencing them, which is why they feel different than the others. Birdly is the actual outlier in the group, as I have no idea what he's going to be used for or if his sole purpose is to carry Noelle through. But I find it interesting that they have similarities, but the violent one goes passive with love, and the gentle one goes genocidal. For the story in whole, I think the goal is pretty straightforward. A disconnection to live without us. The world of Undertale and Deltarune only lives when we turn it on. If we get bored and turn it off, most characters have no idea about the passage of time, only a select few who already show signs of being aware. Either they're looking for a clean break to sustain themselves, or hoping to cross the gap and somehow maybe end up in our own world. Is Deltarune just Undertale recoded to get your attention? I don't know, honestly, because that is stepping into some serious meta territory. Characters who were important were added later to Undertale because of their representation in Deltarune, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this is the exact same copy-pasted game. I personally like to think it is, but Toby himself said in an interview something along the lines of the ending that you get in Undertale is still there and they're still living their life. So it may be a difference in worlds with similar connections. After all, it does add new mechanics such as TP, tension points, that were specifically called not magic. In an interview, Toby even mentions that he can't fully go into it without spoiling, so that distinction is important. Though I'm not fully sure how it is just yet. Just keep an eye out on TP conversations because breadcrumbs can feed if we find enough to make a loaf. Some other things that I note as odd but have no real idea about yet are Chris being blue in the Dark World, the Neo armor being Metatom's armor, the personality changes at seemingly random characters, the Sans doors, the Amalgamites on Jevel's attacks, why the King's Throne was destroyed, and religious monsters. Seriously, that last one hit me like a freight train. I know it has to have some level of significance, but I don't know how just yet. The original story of Deltarune was that an angel came down from the surface and freed all monsters from the underground. Depending on your playthrough, this could be breaking through the barrier or slaughtering everyone. Noelle wears a ring of thorns in the Snowgrave section, symbolic to Jesus' crown of thorns when he was crucified for all of humankind's sins. With Noel also being religious and a reference to Christmas, a pagan holiday that is commonly celebrated by Christians about the birth of Jesus, it really feels like there's something there, but I just don't know what. When I think about it, it becomes so overwhelming to think about critically. Undertale, the game about a child saving or slaughtering monsters, is only a small part of the true story. It was a taste of true horror that lies within the code, waiting, watching, and wandering for each crack on our journey. If you've never played Undertale but know the deeper lore, you really aren't spoiled too much on Undertale for the characters and love that go in it. And that low-key scares me because it proves a point that I think the game is trying to make. That at the end of the day, all these lovable characters, all these interactions you have, the choices you made, mean nothing if you do not get to dig deeper. Everything needs a deeper meaning over the connections you can make through the game. Hurting the characters you claim to adore, specifically to get a scrap of information fed to you or to prove your ability to conquer. They may be fictional, but that is the beauty of art, the symbolism and parallels to real life. Obviously, most people who did the genocide route won't be going around committing real genocide, but it stops to make us think for a moment, how far are we willing to go? The obvious choice for a final boss is Gaster, but I also kind of hope and lean towards it being Susie, as she shows consistently that she is against the grain and wants to be there for her friend. If Susie learns of the possession, I think she would be horrified first, and then determined to get the parasite, which is us, out. Also, just a side note, I don't think determination is a real thing in the game. I think the whole point is that they are trying to explain in their own way what our power is. So we are called determination, but it's really just us popping in. I do wonder if we go up against Susie if this will be a more complex puzzle, trying to find a way to spare Susie with no spare option, similar to the Asgore battle, since us losing means losing connection with the world we spent so much time to build. Maybe we'll have to have a choice to either end the game or force it going. I know there's only one ending for the game, but just something cute to think about, and also horrifying because some people won't let go. And I wonder what the reset feature is going to be like. I bet money having multiple saves will come into factor later down the line, maybe punishing you for the choices you've made. Once again, the ending is meant to stay the same, but the different interactions and punishments can come into play before that. I know that got a bit messy at the end there, but in reality, I just wanted to lay all of that out to gather my thoughts. I had a lot of fun writing the script, and I really like thinking about my theories, and I know that once we get 2 whole new chapters, I'm sure it'll come with a lot more complexity to the story, or answer some common questions. I'm currently rewatching Delta Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 during the script, so there could have been something that comes forward that maybe I just missed and needed a fresh eye to see. But the Dark World seriously eludes me, unless it's meant to be the space that Gaster and the other followers are from, like their version of Limbo, which is my current headcanon. Or maybe a domain that Gaster created to have some sense of control in creating enemies and characters that we see borrowing from pre-existing characters, like his own amalgamations. The start of Chapter 1 gave that feeling much more than the rest of the game thus far, but I don't throw it outside the realm of possibility. I am curious though, what do you hope to see in future chapters? My biggest hope is to see a full breakdown of Noelle, like Kara game over ending kind of breakdown if you keep pushing her. That and collecting the shadow crystals being actually bad instead of good. I am counting the days away from a release, and when we get the game, we'll reconvene here and see what can be answered, what is fully off the table. As usual, thank you so much for taking the time to stick around, and remember to drink your water, eat your broccoli, and have a fantastic day. See you all in the next video.